Welcome to the Brave Women at Work podcast. This is your host, Jen Pasticas. I'm so glad you're here. With the Brave Women at Work podcast, you'll get the resources and tips along with real-world stories and humor to empower and inspire you to take bolder and braver actions in your career and life. Welcome to the Brave Women at Work podcast. This is your host, Jen Pasticas. I'm so glad you're here. Well, hey, everyone. How are you doing out there? So as you're going to find out during today's show, and I'm giving you some spoilers early because I'm just really excited about this conversation. I have one of the authors that I have worked with, Magon Peuker, on the show today. So yes, there's a spoiler alert for you. I have a new business kind of birthing right now. It's called Amplify Women. So AMPLIFI, Amplify Women, and it helps female authors and entrepreneurs get their voices into the world. So I'm not going anywhere with Brave Women at Work, but you also will hear me interview some of the authors that I work with on Brave Women at Work, the podcast, as well. So Magon and I began working on marketing her book earlier this year, maybe April or May, around that time. And when I first met Magon, I was so pumped to work with her because this was the first children's book that my business partner, Hope Mueller of Hunter Street Press, and I were going to ever publish the first time. And we were like, okay, we're on uncharted water and we're really pumped about this. And so the book also is very beautiful and very special. So the title of the book is Raelynn's Flower Garden, and it is named after Magon's daughter, Raelynn. And so I also must give a shout out to Hope's daughter, Olivia Deckard, the illustrator on this book. It is just lovely how she made this book and the characters come to life. Also, the book's message is also appropriate for children and adults. And it boils down to this. We need to be kind and respectful to others because we never know what someone else is facing. Can you just feel that? I feel that like kind of viscerally in my bones, right? I don't know what you, the listener, are facing. You don't know every little detail of what I am facing. We just need to be kind to one another. So if someone has a different situation or they look different or they have a different life experience, show them love and care. And again, be kind to those who you encounter in this world because you don't know. You don't know every little detail, or you may not know anyway. So how could I not want to support this project? So as soon as I read the book, I'm like, yep, I'm in. So I was like, okay, yep, I'm in. And then so fast forwarding, you're going to learn that this book reached Amazon bestseller in multiple categories, which was so wonderful and just a cherry on the top of the experience. So during the show, Magon and I chatted about just her background and her challenging story, which was, some of it was new for me and in the moment. So it was very vulnerable and just wonderful to have the conversation with her, including, her story includes like a scary and abusive marriage, finding ways out of that relationship, finding out completely unexpectedly that her second daughter, Raelynn, had a rare genetic disease. And it wasn't even at birth. It was 10 months after she was born. The difficult and brave decisions that Magon had to make to protect herself and her daughters. How she ended up having a third daughter. She didn't even think it was going to happen with her new husband, which was entirely unexpected. What advice Magon would like to provide other parents or anyone around someone that has special needs. And how pain can birth creativity, as it did for Magon and her book, Raelynn's Flower Garden. And how it's never too late to find joy and happiness in your life. All of my conversations with all the authors and the entrepreneurs and all of the brave women are so special, but this one was really touched me, and I hope it touches you as well. So here is more about Magon. Magon Peuker is a wife and mother to 3 wonderful girls aged 1 to 15. She loves being a stay-at-home mom who creates beautiful spaces and doing home projects with her husband. Magon enjoys baking, interior design, and traveling. Writing her first children's book is a fun and new experience for her, unleashing a new creative outlet for Magon. She is looking forward to writing more books and adding to Raelynn's book series. Magon is grateful to her family and for their love and support through this journey. She knows that without her family, none of this would be possible. So, if the podcast Brave Woman at Work has helped you, has moved you, has pushed you, challenged you, it somehow benefited you personally or professionally, I would just love it if you shared it with a family member, a friend, or a colleague. And of course, those ratings and reviews, they matter. I wish they didn't, but they do. So if you could leave a rating and review, it would just mean the world to me. And if you already have, I thank you. And of course, if you have any topics you'd like to hear about on the show as we move forward, I think this might, in 2026, might be our fifth season, our fifth whole year. Please email me at hello@bravewomenatwork.com. I would love to hear from you. Also, if you haven't heard one of my announcements lately on my affirmation deck, this podcast has inspired so much. It's inspired a book series and now it's inspired an affirmation deck. So it's called the Brave Woman at Work Affirmation Deck. And because I am an overachiever, it has 54 cards instead of 52. And it is a beautiful, curated compilation of advice and wisdom from Brave Woman at Work podcast guests, authors in the Brave Woman at Work anthology series, and other just near and dear community members to Brave Women at Work. So you can get a copy of the deck for $19.99 plus $10 in shipping, domestic US. And if you are international, you can still get a copy. We just have to figure out the shipping together. So if you want to purchase the deck, just go to bravewomanatwork.com and click on resources. And if you have them in your hand, I hope that you're enjoying them. I've seen women take pictures of them like weekly, so they kind of like rotate throughout the year. I've had some folks like show me pictures how they're pulling a new card and recycling them on a daily basis. However you need to use them, I hope that they benefit and they create joy and enjoyment in your life. All right, let's welcome Magon to the show. Well, hello, Magon. Welcome to Brave Woman at Work. How are you today?
I'm great, Jen. How are you doing?
I am so, so well. Thank you so much. I've loved to feature authors and I just feel really privileged that I got to help you launch your book. We're going to tell everyone about it. Before we do, excuse me, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and how you've gotten to where you are?
Yeah, so kind of the background story with me is I've lived in California all my life. I was born and raised, and I was previously married for 13 years. And I had my 15-year-old daughter and my 13-year-old daughter, Raelynn, with my ex. It was not a great marriage, and it was um, an abusive marriage, if I should say so. And it got really ugly at the end to where I had to completely block this person from my life and from my children's life. And we ended up fleeing to Nevada. And when we moved out here 3 years ago, I met up with my current husband, Sean, and we were actually in middle school together in California. And we just touched base again and hit it off. And we got married, and we have a little 1-year-old together. And she's amazing. She's just a little light, and it's didn't even know I was going to have another kid 15 years after my first baby, but here we are, and I'm in a happy, healthy marriage, and we have our 15-year-old who's at the high school here. She does volleyball, and Raelynn is our little special needs girl who she gets to go to school now, and she's just a light for us. And then Kylie, our 1-year-old, and she's just a maniac, and she's running everywhere. So we're we're just trying to balance life as much as we possibly can at this point. And here we are.
Yeah, that's crazy. So my kids are about 6.5 years apart. And so what is that like, to have a 15-year-old and then a 1-year-old? I'm sure that's quite a trip.
It really is, because you're starting over again. And I had Michaela in my 20s, early 20s, and now I'm going to be 40. And so it's just this whole other era. But thankfully, Michaela is such a great help, and she's at that age where she's more of like a second mom, which she can help out a lot with, which I'm very, thankful and for her for that. But Kylie is was she was planned, but obviously, if you would have told me 2 years ago if I was gonna have another baby, I would have said, "Yeah, right, not with Raelynn, not with the needs that, we currently have to have with her," and that would just be such a crazy thing to throw on top of the mix, but it works, and we make do, and we actually have probably, like, the best, most healthiest life that we've had in forever. So these last 3 years have just been magical. We didn't know that we even needed this baby, but we do. She just completes our family, and, you make it work, and it's been wonderful.
Oh, that's so amazing. It gives me chills. Like to just, I'm so happy. You know, you and I have been working, and we'll talk about your book, but we've been talking about the book. We didn't talk about this. So thank you for sharing that. And like, really makes me happy that you guys are in such a good place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't you? I want to just before we, and I appreciate you sharing that you were in a pretty significantly abusive marriage. Before we kind of move to the book and move to Raylan's story and what it is like to parent a special needs child, do you have any advice for any women out there that might be in the middle of it, in the thick of it, like you were, a few years back? I just wanted to see if you had any wisdom now that you're on the other side of it, right? You see the other light on the other end of the tunnel. You're living in the light now. What advice would you give to a woman that's in the thick of what you were going through then?
Yeah, so I would have to say that the biggest issue for me when I was going through everything was that I knew deep down for a long time in my marriage that something was wrong. And I had this image to uphold, right? You want to, you have these kids with this person, your family's connected to this person, their family's connected to you. And you go, what do you do, right? Because you don't want to let anybody down. And I thought about everybody else around me. I thought it, you hear this saying a lot is that, these kids they need mom and dad, right? And I've really learned through this healing process over these last 3 years and just over this over writing and over the last year really, really strongly, how much you need to listen to your inner instinct and how much you need to go off of that. Because when I removed my family and my friends and everybody that seemed to have some sort of advice or, want to tell me what the right thing was to do, their situation was not mine. And at the end of the day, when I could remove all of those people and say, what is right for me? Which seems selfish, right? You think as a mom, especially, you're thinking that sounds really selfish to just want what you want. But at the end of the day, when you remove all of those people and you remove the image of what it looks like to everybody else, and you deeply look at what you need to be as a healthy, growing woman and human being and a mother, that was the only way. Like the only way to go forward for me was to get out of this abusive relationship. And I'll add, it was not I had a big push because I went through a divorce,
Hmm.
and during that divorce, my ex-husband tried to take his life.
Oh,
And he did
wow.
that in front of me. He FaceTimed me and made me watch.
Oh,
And
my
so
word.
that trauma obviously is its own, of itself.
Mm.
But I knew that was the end. That was it. My kids could no longer be around this person. I could no longer be around this person. And had I listened to that instinct far beyond, I mean, years before, I think I would have been in maybe a better situation, or maybe that would have not happened had I done things differently. But I don't blame myself. I'll say that. But it's something that stays with me that I stayed in it for too long. And there's always somebody that's going to support you in this world that I had to leave with a shirt on my back, leave my house with my kids. And I think I thank God every day that literally I had my kids in my bed with me that night. And that's all I needed. At the end of the day, I didn't need the pictures on the wall. I didn't need the things in the house. I didn't need everything that we had created. You feel like, how do I step away from this life? Especially, 13, 14 years, people are married for 20 years. How do you build a life after that? And at the end of the day, especially in an abusive relationship, I was so thankful at the end of the day just to have both of my kids on either side of me in a bed
Hmm.
that wasn't even mine, that they were safe.
And I really appreciate you sharing that. So, if that wasn't enough, right? And I did not know those stories. So, thank you again for sharing. Let's talk about Raelynn. And
Yes.
Raelynn is beautiful, your middle child, your second child from the first marriage. She has a rare disease, which we're going to want to hear about. She's special needs, but she also is like such a fighter and such a miracle. And so, why don't you tell us a little bit about Raelynn and your experience parenting her?
So, like you said, Raelynn is just a light. She's amazing. She's wonderful, but she comes with such complex medical issues, and it's a mix of emotions with her because there's fear and there's grief and there's just this deep gratitude that I have every day that she's still living and thriving. But there's just like this overwhelming love that just blankets all of it. And Raylan's like feisty. She knows what she wants. And even though she's nonverbal and she's in the wheel, like, she goes to school, she's in a wheelchair, but she's so communicative. Like even with me, I know what she wants. At the end of the day, she gets out what she wants and she'll point to things and she'll do sign language. And so I know that there's a person in there. I know that because people look at her and they say, "Oh, she's in a wheelchair and she's not able to speak." There's just nothing going on there. There's nothing in there. And it's so far from the truth because she's probably the spunkiest,
Hmm.
most, crazy, teenager, like that has her own way of doing things and is very independent and wants what she wants and tells you what she wants. And she's she's a human being. She's in there. There's a voice in there. And I love that about her. She's strong-willed, and if she wasn't as strong-willed as she probably wouldn't have been here. But she just fights. She fights every single day. And for the most part, she does it with a smile, but there are days where we have our ups and downs and we
Yeah,
just have
she's
to
human.
navigate and see. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's back up for a minute. So when she was born, well, let me even back up even further. So when you were pregnant with her, right? Even back then, I say back then, my daughter's 13. I think she just turned 13, correct?
13 in August. Yep.
13 in August, yep, when the book came out. And so they're pretty close. Your daughter and my daughter are pretty close in age. And so did you know that she was going to be special needs before she was born, or was it like an absolute shock when you gave birth?
It was an absolute shock because we had already had our 15-year-old who was just as healthy as can be. There was no problems. There was nothing that ever thought that we were going to have a special needs child. And when she was born, she was perfect. She was healthy. She was born on time. There
Oh,
was nothing
wow.
indicating that there was any problem. And up until about 8 months old, we brought her in because we had learned that the whole left side of her body wasn't, yeah, I mean, she wasn't using her hands or her arms. She wasn't putting weight on her leg. And I didn't even think of the word stroke because in my mind, I didn't really know about strokes and I didn't know that they could happen in kids.
Me either.
But yeah, I'm like, that happens to, 8, 70, 80-year-old, people. I didn't know that
Yes.
that happened to babies. And so I didn't have any inkling at all when I took her into the emergency room and just said, "Hey, it's just kind of weird, that the side's just really not working. And, can you tell me maybe, they did an MRI that night and came back, and our world was just shattered when they had told us that she had had her first stroke at 8 months. So I said, like, why? What is going how? She's meeting her milestones. Everything seemed to be on track. Why? What is the cause of this? And they told us that they didn't have any answers. They didn't know. That they were just going to hold her for observation. And she ended up having a second stroke days later in the hospital.
Oh,
And we were just trying to get through each day. We were trying to, after she had stopped having her strokes in the hospital, we went to rehab for a couple of weeks and did like an outpatient thing. And then it was from there, it was just physical therapy and trying to rehabilitate her on our own and having to learn those milestones over again. Now, I will say that at 8 months old, she had a double craniotomy, which is where they cut her open on both sides of her brain. And they told us at that time that her vasculature was just too small to supply sufficient blood flow to parts of her body. And so when they did this full workup, they found out that we have two carotid arteries and two vertebral arteries. Both of her vertebral arteries were completely occluded, which means there was no blood flow getting through them. And then
oh,
one of her
wow.
vertebral arteries was completely occluded. So she only had the one main artery up to her brain to supply that. So they laid these superficial arteries on her brain to try and grow more arteries to where they could get more blood flow up to her brain. And then at that point, from there, it was just more doctors and more specialists. And, now it's a kidney issue and now it's a heart issue. And now, so we were just in the thick of it. We were
Yeah.
just specialist after specialist and making sure we were doing our follow-up appointments and keeping her alive, just because they were saying we don't have a diagnosis. We don't know why these are happening. We don't have a cure for it. And it was something that was just brand new. And so Raelynn became studies, globally. Like, she's in the NIH and she's
Wow.
kind of all over the place for kind of the first kid to have what we found out later to be something called MYLK. So we did this gene study where both dad and I did our own, blood and
Hmm.
donated that. And then they took her blood as well and then came back and they said, there's one gene mutation that's off and it's called MYLK. And I said, I've never heard of it. Don't know. I'm going to do all the research and study that I possibly can. And it's pretty much in a nutshell, it's just where your veins and where your arteries are so torturous and so all over the place that it's not normal. It's not like a normal, like you and I have in our in
Hmm.
our in our body. So it posed a lot of threats because at that time I thought my kid's a ticking time bomb. I need to find the right specialist. And so we ended up going up to San Francisco and finding a stroke specialist up there. We were up there for a month inpatient, which was really hard to leave Michaela at the time. But
Hmm.
we have found out just more and more with the doctors that we decided to go and see on her own and just make it happen. And we got to a point where each time she was going under for anesthesia, she came out and we had heard that she had had another stroke. So at this point, she had her fourth and fifth stroke already. And I said,
Mm.
I need to get up to this stroke specialist. And we did. We made the drive up to San Francisco, which was like an 8-hour drive. And I said, just get us up there, whatever we have to do. And we stayed up there. And they wanted to put in a port and a G tube for her. And during that procedure, she ended up having her sixth and seventh stroke. And it was bilateral, which meant that there was a stroke on each side of the brain simultaneously.
Oh
And
my.
that
How old was she then?
she was 2.5 at the time.
Wow. Okay.
So all of her strokes happened between 8 months old and 2.5 years old.
Okay.
And those 7 strokes were just debilitating on her body in that short period of time.
Yeah.
So that sixth and seventh one just, it completely knocked her back to this, not even a new, I wouldn't even say a newborn state, because she couldn't suck from a bottle. She couldn't roll over. She couldn't cry. She couldn't,
Wow.
do anything. And this is a kid that was already, sitting on the potty and doing potty training stuff and 2 to 3 word sentences. And even after all those other strokes, they were so minor compared to the sixth and seventh stroke. And it just debilitated her back to
Mm.
pre newborn, that they're just, and even to this day, she's nonverbal now. She's not able to talk. She had to relearn how to walk. She walks with a gait, but as she grows and as she gets bigger and the weight that she puts on, I mean, she's tiny, she's little, but it's hard on her. It's hard on her muscles. It's hard on her bones. It's hard
Mm-hmm.
on how she's grown with the bone structure that she has. And so that's where we're at now. Is we just did stem cells, stem cell therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It last in May, and we've seen such great things. I mean, it's gotten rid of so much of the inflammation, and we should touch back about that if you want. But I've
That's
seen
when
it
I
happen
met
enough.
you. So like you guys were
Right,
just doing that. So we'll have to touch back on that for sure
right.
because it was, well, I mean, let's just go there, right? Like when I met you, we didn't know if the book, like, Hope of Hunter Street Press, Hope Mueller, and I work together and we're supporting you as much as we can. And so Hope was like, don't call Megan. Like, I don't know if she's going to do this. And you still did because she was like a miracle, but it was very touch and go this spring, correct?
Very touch and go. So I believe that I started probably March of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And, we wanted that August 15th date because of Raylan's birthday. And in May, it was, our world was turned upside down again. And she had been doing so well for, 10 plus years. We kind of got out of the whole, like, let's move away from the doctor world. Let's do more holistic medicine and let's only go to the doctor in case of emergencies and just see how our body's done, because it's been so resilient and so amazing, and how it has, conformed to her, that the more we touch it and the more we get in there and do things, the worse it becomes, I feel. So she was doing great. And then May happened, and we didn't see her eat or drink for almost 2 weeks. We saw she had lost 15 pounds. I mean, this is like a
And
78-year-old or 78-pound
I was going to
child,
say, that's a
you know?
lot of weight for her. Yeah.
So she's already small, her muscle tone is not there because of the wheelchair and things like that, but 78-pound child to begin with, and losing 15 pounds in like a 2-week period
Mm.
was just, we were like, "This is not good," So we were trying to get her to eat, we were trying to get her to drink, and we were so worried that she was gonna have another stroke, because the doctors say if she's not hydrated, that's the prime time that she would have one. So I just called it and I said, I hate going to the hospital, but at this point we need to. And we went down to the children's hospital here. We were down there for about a week, and they did not have the correct specialists here. We were limited to a hematologist and some of the other specialists that she needed. And I made the call and I told my insurance, I said, we're going down to Rady's, where she was when she was a baby and when she had all of her strokes.
So
We
back
have
to
doctors down
California.
there, back to California, back down to San Diego,
Okay.
and make that drive. And we did it. And we were out of the hospital, I believe, 10 days later. And I said, when we got back home, because she started eating, she started drinking, she started putting back on the weight, and they didn't find anything. They really didn't find much that was wrong with her, which was weird. I mean, they did test after test, and they thought, there's no infection. There's nothing that would prompt her to not want to
Oh,
eat or
so they
drink.
never
So
found out like what it was.
no, and I was reading the panels afterwards and I'm like, yeah, sodium's a little low, whatever. Like she was dehydrated but obviously, like what caused her to become dehydrated, ahead of time. But we really didn't get the answers that we wanted. But she started eating and drinking again for whatever reason and got her back home. And I told my family at the time, I said, you need to come see her. Like, this is going to be it. Like, we are going to have to say goodbye to Raelynn. I do not want her passing in a hospital. And she was well enough to come home, but I still knew that something was wrong with her. And, I said, I don't know. I don't know when her last day is going to be, but I don't know if she's going to make it much longer, like holding out with her little body the way that it is. And, I had my parents come and I had family come out and I had as many people as I possibly could come and sit on my couch and make sure that they could see her and bring her gifts, and people were bringing food, and it was amazing time. People, so many people, connected with her and saw her. But I said, this is our last ditch effort. Let's go and go back to California. And being in the special needs community, you know moms of other special needs kids and you know their stories. And so I was able to get a number for the stem cell therapy from one of the moms that I knew. And I said, I want to get her well enough. Let's give her 2 weeks to get her strength as much as we can back, to not make this other long journey out there. But let's not wait too long, because I don't want to say that we waited
Yeah.
2 months to get her better, but then she didn't have 2 months. I'm telling you, we went out there for just one night just to make sure that everything had gone right. And she's laying in this bed, and the stem cell therapy was so much easier than I thought it was. It was just literally just they did it through an IV, and
Oh, I didn't know.
we
I
were
thought it
there.
might be spinal. I had no idea. Okay.
Right, and I didn't know anything, but it was just, through an IV, and we were there for about an hour, and the doctor's like, "We really don't have any side effects, but if for some reason, get a hotel that night and just see how she does throughout the night, and then go home the next day." The next morning, we had some music playing in our hotel room, and we had put, one of her favorite, artists up on the TV. And she's up in bed and she's jumping up on her knees. Like, I'm telling you, like, she's up on her knees and she's jumping and she's, putting
Wow.
her fist up in the air and she's trying to sing these songs. And I'm looking at Sean, I'm looking at my husband and I'm going, this
It's
isn't
like a miracle.
possible.
Like a
Right. It's
miracle.
it's straight miracle, because they're like, "Well, it takes 3 to 6 months to really show the full effects." And I'm like, "Our child, I know it's not even been 24 hours, it's been like 12 hours. Like, there's no way that this is happening." And so I called the doctor and he was just like, "But the inflammation goes away like 100% within, like, right away, immediately. So that's what you're seeing, is that inflammation alone is not in her body right now." And it hurt me, because I'm going, "Oh my gosh, she's been living in so much pain all of her life, and that's just what she knows." And for the first time in a long time, I think she was feeling well
Good.
enough to be able to do that. And so, yeah, that was like our last ditch effort, and it ended up being our miracle. And she's only gotten better from there.
So do you have to go back and do more stem cell therapy? Like, does it incrementally or?
Right. So this doctor says every 6 months is usually
Okay.
what you can do. It's a money issue. If anything else,
It's
it's seven
expensive, I'm sure.
$1,000 per thing. But it's if it's what it's what we need, then how do you say no to that? We'll come up with that one way or another. But I can't say enough good things about it, because this is something that is going to be in our budget for at least, for 2 times a year, to go back to this doctor and just get it done, because the more times you do it, the better off. I mean, they
That
become. I
she's
mean,
like her, like just quality of life. Okay.
correct.
Wow. 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 And so let's kind of transition. Let's talk about the book. So you're dealing with all this, right? You have a 1-year-old, just like we're level setting again, right? And
Mhm.
then you just happen to like knock on Hope's door and say, "Hey, by the way, I want to write books." So I mean, you
Mhm.
didn't have to do that. So what prompted you to write this first children's book? It's called Raylan's Flower Garden. It's absolutely gorgeous, everyone. It's on ebook and it's on hardcover now. It's live and on Amazon. So why? Why did you decide to write a children's book?
So I never thought I was going to write a children's book. I have been working on my autobiography for years, and
Mhm.
I was at a standstill with it because I had had great loss back when I was about 25, 26. And I had lost my brother at the time. And I was writing about him and the day that we had found out about his death. And I just hit a wall, you know. I know that there's like writer's block, and I know that that's like a thing. But for me, it was just reliving the trauma. I just put it on the back burner, and I was like, I don't know if I can write anymore. And so at the time, I was just kind of stuck with, not writing that piece. But then again, we had this opportunity that, all of last year, we had an incident with the school, and Raelynn came home with bruising on her stomach.
Mm.
And, I had to get the police involved, and there was due process. And I just became defeated in the process of this whole thing because I wanted so badly to have my child at this school where she was only a few minutes away from me in case something happened. And now that dream was kind of coming to an end and crashing down. And there's only one classroom and one teacher. And so, going up against the school was an impossible feat. And I hurt for my child. She was, you know, told that she had to stay at home every day because they refused to allow her to go to another school during that time. And so my mama bear, fighting
Hmm.
self decided I'm going to be inspired. I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to turn this into something. And I started writing this book, Raylan's Flower Garden, and it's about Raelynn and how, she's discriminated against and how hard she struggles each day, and how this book can have double meaning because it's not just about her physical challenge, but it's the emotional and the psychological damage that has had a far greater impact on her in her life. And so I want to say I think I wrote this book. I mean, it's short, it's a children's book, but I sat and wrote for maybe 2 days, worth, and I was done with it. And
Wow.
I thought, well, this will be such a great little legacy to leave for Raelynn, and my friends and my family can have copies, and maybe I'll just print like 50 copies of it, and that would be fun. That would be enough, for me to just like let my family have this, and it would just be for us.
You met the wrong publisher. You met the right publisher, but the wrong publisher on that initial thought.
Right, and I met Hope, and I was talking with you, and it just became so much more than that, and I feel like it has just increased as we've gone. And so I just keep being amazed by the people that I meet, and I just keep getting amazed of like, I want this book to be in the hands of as many people as I possibly can, because I feel like everybody needs to read this book and have a copy in their house, whether they have a special needs kid or not, because it's beautiful, and it's such a strong, great message for kids and for adults,
So
and
what is the
so
message? What's the big takeaway? Because I want everyone to get a copy of this book. What's the big message?
I think that there's a couple different ones. So there's obviously the message of resilience and how people face serious adversity. And, Raylan didn't give up, and when so much was taken away from her, her story seems about is it's completely about courage and perseverance. So you have that. And then you have hope and you have inner strength. And
Mhm.
even with her suffering, she continues to maze the world around her. And I think that the garden is, it's a great metaphorical, setting to where for someone that can grow inside herself despite her hardship. And so the biggest one that I would take away is that the power of light and darkness is just such a big thing in our life, and that's for a reason, because even amid the dark, like even with the darkness, she, and despite the illness and despite everything that she's gone through, she just radiates life and light for others. And it's just a reminder that people can bring beauty and joy and hope even when life is hard. And so, the message is not only those things, but it's to be kind and it's to be accepting. And it's just this world of something that looks different can have beauty. And, like I said, for kids and for adults alike, it's just a great piece to read to your kids and a good
Mhm.
reminder to yourself that no matter how different somebody is, at the end of the day, we all want to be loved and accepted.
Yeah, this is a beautiful book for like moms groups, children's groups, schools. My kids have something called SEL, social emotional learning. That's like the program they have. And this is a beautiful piece of, I think it's art. It's beautiful, the book. So yes, I would recommend that everybody pick up a copy, whether you have kids, you don't have kids, you know people. And this is a story about people and a person that's just amazing. So, a couple things I wanted to share about this is that this is a family affair. This book is a true family affair. So, we've got Hope Mueller of Hunter Street Press. We've got Olivia Deckard, who did the illustrations, which are glorious.
Mhm.
We have your whole family. I'm kind of out there, helping how I can. And the wonderful thing about this book is the day that it went live was, was it the physical day or was it the day before Raylan's birthday?
It was the day before. I believe
The day
it was
before,
the
a
14th.
14th. Yes. So it came out on the 14th, and Hope and I have to share this. We were concerned, right? Like we can tell you this now because you've hit like I think in 10 or 11 categories. But typically we promote books where they're anthologies. At least that's been our experience. And that means that, there might be 8, 9, 10 authors that are behind it in all their communities. So Hope's texting me like, you better be stirring up some good stuff back there to drive
Mhm.
to this. And so I took that really seriously, not because it was just scary. I really believe in this book. And so I was in Paris and that turned out to work out okay because I could see 9 hours or however many hours between Paris and your area, Nevada, I could see what was happening because I was so far ahead from a time perspective. So Hope and I, like I'm walking through thank goodness for my husband. I was like, listen, you're going to have to be really kind to me today as I'm walking through subways and I'm watching Amazon. But it worked. I mean, it worked. It was a real family affair. It was I just want you to know, it was such a privilege and a pleasure. This one was really special. And to understand, I'm so sorry I couldn't be at your launch party, but to, understand there wasn't a dry eye in the house and that like there were family and friends. And it was like right before Raylan's party and everyone sang to her. Just, it was really special. So thank you so much for including me in this beautiful work.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being my right hand gal when I need it, because you've always, even if we're just texting back and forth, you're just like this or this, and it helps me get through. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. And again, I'm very grateful to my husband for not, losing his mind when I was in Paris subways. But
I'm grateful for him too. Thank
I
you.
know we're gonna say thanks, John. So you have I want to kind of share, you have some other stuff coming too, right? So I had chatted with you and you're like, yep, I'm about 80, or maybe you're at 100% of the next book. So plus you said the autobiography. I know that's a much heavier content for you. So like what's next? Like what are you seeing for you next?
Yeah. So I have two more books that I want to add to the Raelynn, series of books. And like you said, the next book's already in the works. And it, can I share the title? I mean,
I don't
is
even know
that,
the title. If you can share,
oh,
if you, yeah, feel free.
yes. So the title will be Raelynn Travels to the Moon.
Oh, so
And there's
cute.
just a quick fun fact about that because she loves the moon. She loves anything that's stars and galaxies and just anything in the sky. She's very fascinated by it. So, she loves looking at the moon. We have a projector in her room that actually projects the moon up on the ceiling.
Oh, that's
And she
cool.
does not go to bed until that is on every single night. She reminds me, she points up at the ceiling and is like, "My moon, hello, like we need that on." So, so yes, she loves it. And I said, "Okay, we're going to incorporate something that she absolutely loves and that she's fascinated with." And her stepdad and her, they'll lay in bed and they'll talk about the moon and the stars and what's up there, and they'll point at different stars out the window and stuff. So it really is kind of this picturesque moment where you see them in there and you're like, okay, this is the sweetest moment ever. But I will say that that inspired me to do the next book because this little girl, Raelynn, is going to travel to the moon in her wheelchair. And she's going to make that mission
Oh,
with the help of her friends and family. And they're going to find different ways. I think I'm going to incorporate, maybe older sister or, and then maybe stepdad and maybe like one of her friends or something, and just incorporate them to have three ideas of how she's going to be able to make it to the moon in her wheelchair. And so it will be, definitely just fantasy and just hopefully whimsical again, kind of concept of how this little girl in a wheelchair is going to travel to the moon. So,
oh, I'm so excited. So that one will be sometime in 26, correct?
yes, correct.
Oh,
Hope,
okay.
yeah.
All right. And so then you're going to have a third. Do you have a theme for the third or no? You're still kind of percolating on the third theme.
I'm still up in the air with that one. I have, a couple of things bouncing around,
Okay.
but, nothing solid yet.
Okay. And then the autobiography, I'm assuming will eventually come out, but it's just a really, it sounds like a lot of painful, like grief process to get through it. Is that correct?
It is. So hopefully Raelynn Travels to the Moon will come out, or I can start maybe promoting it, in the springtime again. And then, maybe by maybe I could do two in one year. I'm thinking, maybe at the beginning of the spring and then maybe at the end of the year, launch the third one and then have those ones kind of done. But then in like the 2-year mark, I really want to drop that autobiography, and I just gotta, I write pieces here and there. And it was, when I first started it, I was writing it exactly how I wanted it to start, and I was going to just do it till the end. And I just feel like because of how much has happened and how much loss I've had in the past, in the trauma that I've had in the past, even just recently, with the new things with my ex and things like that, it's going to be very difficult to write about those things. So I really have to prepare myself
Mm-hmm.
to get into that writing, to get into that, mode and that thinking of, here we go, like we're going to get into it, and and be in those places for a while. So
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. And so, and you've got a nice runway of projects and things before you get there. One thing that's striking me, before we end today is that you've had such devastating loss and curveballs that life has thrown at you. And I was just wondering, I knew I had to interview you not only because you're one of our authors, but also because I knew you're a very brave woman, right? Like, I mean, the whole podcast is called Brave Woman at Work. I'm like, well, I think Megan fits that description. But what comes up for me is just you must have tools, whether it's gratitude or prayer or because every time I talk to you, and maybe it's just because, we're still getting to know each other, you seem very grounded. You seem very rooted to me. And I'm just wondering, what you do, right? Like in these like storms to stay what on the outside, I see as very grounded and rooted in who you are and the mission of what you're doing.
So I think, you just bringing back that resilience piece is, trust me, there's days where I fall apart, don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. But I've gotten that a lot from a lot of different people where it's like, wow, like they hear one aspect of my life.
Yeah.
If I share, just one snippet of what happened with my ex, or just one snippet about losing my brother, or just the hardships that we have to go through with Raelynn. I share one piece with somebody and they're just like, wow, like that's hard, right? And I'm like, yeah, but then this happened and then this, and they're like, okay, now I don't even believe it because there's just too much now. It's that much where you just look at somebody and go, one of those things like couldn't happen to you. How did, 10 of those things happen to you?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, there's that resilience piece where I've had many women and, many of my family members and friends come up to me and they say, one of your biggest qualities is that you turn a situation that's horrible, that's traumatic, and you've always come out on top for some reason. And so many people they bury themselves in the hole, or they get
Mhm.
caught up in other things, and they don't know the tools to get out and turn something horrible into something beautiful, right? So some of the things that I came up with is I'm a good communicator. I speak up, and I speak up even when it's uncomfortable. And I think that that's a great tool because I know a lot of people are fearful of the outcome, or fearful, in their relationships or public spaces, or in work. Just being able to speak up and advocate for yourself is
Mhm.
such a great tool to have. Um, and so, drawing those boundaries, letting people know what your needs are, and owning your story and telling your truth, whether it's through writing or public speaking or conversation. It just helps dismantle the shame, and it creates a space for others to do the same. And I think that when you start to share your story and you start to become vulnerable and you start to become real with people,
Mhm.
that they want to open up and do the same. And I think that helps bring that common ground because everybody's going through something. It doesn't have to be as grand or as traumatic as the next person, but somebody somewhere always is going through something. And so if you can meet at that middle ground and just say, you know, show that kindness, show that vulnerability, be in your truth, be willing to share your truth with them, you have so many people open up to you. And it goes the same with these special needs communities and moms. Like, I've shared my story and I don't know how many people have come up and said, oh my gosh, I have a special needs child, or my grandchild, has this rare disease, or so being able to get your story out there and be truthful about it, I think is just such a is such a powerful thing. And then I'll also say that, challenging your norm and speaking against injustice,
Mhm.
because I believe that courage really means confronting the discrimination. And that's a big one for us personally, because it isn't how you would normally think, where I'm going against kids or peers her own age and telling her, hey, you got to accept Raelynn as your friend. It's more of the adults on the school settings and people that, are in these big, institutions and corporations that maybe are challenged with understanding, how, what the right thing is, for them. And so it's definitely not always the most popular way to go, and you definitely get some side eye from people, and you definitely feel uncomfortable and unsafe in sometimes you're saying that you're speaking these truths. But when you do, I'm telling you, like 99% of the people will always come back and say, thank you so much for sharing that. You don't know how much that's helped. And it's making me want to, you know, to say this or do this or leave this situation
Mm-hmm.
or be better at work or, whatever they're struggling with. And so, yeah, just having that open conversation and
Mm-hmm.
being truthful, I think is the biggest one for me.
I wonder, and I'm being sarcastic and an attempt to be funny, but you kind of wonder where Raelynn gets that feistiness. You know what I mean? It sounds like she might be hanging out with her mom a little bit.
A little bit, right? Just a little bit.
Just a little, I mean, yes, I mean, it can turn against you as a teenager. I have a teenager. I know that's rough, but it's kept her moving. That feistiness, that fire, that drive, and you advocating for her, that's kept her moving. And that in itself is just so, so amazing and so brave. It
Well,
really
thank
is.
you. Yeah, I really commend both of my girls. Kylie's out of the picture on this one for right now, but my 15-year-old, very mature, very great person inside and out. Raelynn, same way, but they're strong. They're both strong. I know that they're going to be, independent on some level. Raelynn, not so much. She's very dependent on us for
Of
most things,
course.
but in her thinking, she's very independent. And so is Michaela. And Michaela has had to grow up in a world where she's been put on the back burner a lot because she has a special needs sister. And so she's had to learn that we rise above it, right? We rise above the challenges every single day. You have a choice at the end of the day to make it good or make it bad, and to be able to pluck the beauty out of the trauma or to pluck the beauty out of, something horrible is what I teach my girls. And that's
Mm,
that's what we
that is
resonate in.
so good. And I can resonate with everybody that's listening to this show. So I may have stolen some of your thunder, but just wanted to see if you had anything else you wanted to add to my traditional question, which is I'll say, what are 1 to 2 ways that women can be braver at work? And that can be professional, that could be personal, that could be in any way you want to take it. So do you have anything else you'd like to add there?
I mean, like I said, just speak up wherever you're at, I think, and
Yeah,
just be vulnerable and speak truth. And I feel like truth always wins in the end.
I think it's beautiful. So, how can listeners? So there's a couple things. So, number one, go get the book, Raylan's Flower Garden. It's available on Amazon, an ebook and hardcover. It is well worth it, and it also it's just beautiful. It is really, really beautiful. So, go get the book. And then, how can listeners connect with you online?
Right. So I have a website. It's my name, magonpeuker.com, that you can go on, and it gives more info about Raelynn, about our family, just some background info if you want to, get to know Raelynn or be connected with us. You can always, shoot over a text or an email, and um, you can purchase the book there either via Amazon, or you can get a signed copy from Raelynn and I can directly send it to you, which has been really fun. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from that because who doesn't want a signed
A
or
signed copy.
stamped copy
That's
from
nice.
Raelynn?
Yes.
So that's, it has my upcoming events, and I can even come out and do speaking engagements or, have conversations, help, navigate, if there's, what one of my passions I will say is, even when I was in California, and I knew that system a lot better. I've only lived here a couple, 3 years, but one of the biggest things is I would advocate for other moms who just found out they had their child had a diagnosis. And so I would actually meet up with these families and meet up with these moms and help them with resources and help them, navigate this new world. And so I really do feel like I have a heart for that. And so, by going on my website, you can go ahead and, email me or, tell me your life story or, whatever, we can connect that way, because I've definitely lived it. these last 13 years. And I do have a lot of great insight, for families that are maybe just finding out, or maybe just wanted to feel connected, in this community. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that I absolutely love this book and everything it stands for, but the message behind the real story of Raelynn is what needs to get out and be public, I
Mm-hmm.
feel, and so that people can
Mm-hmm.
be educated and uplifted, to be able to move forward.
Yes, and one last thing on that with the events. I know you're, based in Nevada now. I know you're going to be doing stuff in California, Nevada, West Coast, but if you have anything, because this is listened to from folks all over the world. So if you have any virtual stuff or, anything across the nation, right? Like definitely reach out and see, because I know that you're getting booked up already into the end of the year and into the new year. So this message is definitely landing and having a beautiful ripple effect. So, Magon, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thanks for sharing your story farther than I've ever heard it. It's been lovely to hear it from you directly and to be part of this beautiful project. So, thank you.
It's been a pleasure as always, Jen. Thank you so much.
Well, that's a wrap on my discussion with Magon today. I hope you found our conversation both valuable and inspiring. As a reminder, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The show is also available on any other podcast platform you enjoy. Until next time, show up, protect those you love, and be brave.